Please, could you go visit Kinsley for me? Oh, come on. I'm at a critical juncture right now, wondering if I can actually make it to department head. If this screws up my chances, what are you gonna do about our living situation not improving at all? I don't mind that, really. I was planning on getting a part-time job anyway, and that would allow us to think about Kinsley's future. But James just kept saying, "You don't understand anything." Emily, don't you think that's a bit odd? We'd need more data to make that kind of assertion. So, what should we do? When I asked, the two of them looked serious. Regardless of the reason, if she's being given some unclear medication, we need to do something about that first. I got it. But what can I do? Then Sophia said, "Call an ambulance." An ambulance? Please, Emily, that's your job. My brother emphasized, urging me on. In the meantime, we'll investigate that doctor. Right. We'll do whatever it takes for our dear niece. My name is Emily McKinnon, 37 years old. I live with my husband, James, and our daughter, Kinsley. James, a former coworker, and I have been married for 13 years. With Kinsley starting middle school this spring, I thought about starting to work part-time, leading a slightly different life from before. We thought we were living relatively peaceful days. Yes, until very recently. Mom, my leg hurts. One day during summer break, Kinsley suddenly said this when she came home from outside. My goodness, what happened? Where does it hurt? It's a dull, heavy pain deep in my knee. It was unusual for her, who is normally so tolerant of pain, to say something like this. This meant we had to take her to a doctor, so we decided to go to Thatcher Clinic, our family doctor nearby. Thatcher Clinic has been taking care of us since we moved here after getting married, from the time of the previous doctor. Now, the daughter of the previous doctor, Sadie, has become the head doctor, protecting the health of the people in this town. We are one of those families. When Sadie saw Kinsley's condition, her expression clouded. Is there something wrong? Well, let's take an X-ray, she suggested. Kinsley looked at me anxiously. It's going to be okay, I reassured her as I sent her off. And the result was, this isn't good, Sadie said with a serious look. What do you mean by not good? We'll talk about it later in detail. But, as I tilted my head, Sadie decisively said, it would be best for her to be hospitalized for a while. Eventually, when Kinsley was hospitalized, I was the only one called in, and was told clearly. Kinsley has osteosarcoma. This is, in other words, a type of pediatric cancer. Osteosarcoma. Pediatric cancer. Indeed, the term sent a chill through me as well. Osteosarcoma, I timidly asked about it, recalling a book I read long ago where the protagonist was diagnosed with it. Does this mean, that she might have to have her leg amputated or something? In the book, that's what the protagonist was told. No, I don't think it's come to that, but if left untreated, it could become quite serious. So let's start treatment early. I had no choice but to leave it to Dr. Sadie. Once it's termed as treatment, there's nothing more I can say. James felt the same way. When I first told James about Kinsley's illness, he said to me, I see. This is serious. But it'll be okay. Just leave it to Dr. Sadie. And then, as if he had another busy day tomorrow, he quickly went to sleep. Honestly, our relationship wasn't exactly in a good place. I convinced myself that maybe this is normal for families, as much as I can see through my own attempts at convincing. 13 years of marriage. Since Kinsley's birth, I've been more of a mother than a wife, aware that James no longer saw me as a woman. Gaining weight was probably one reason for that. There's a definite reason, but it's nothing I can do anything about. Right now, we're more a family with a child than a couple, living our lives calmly. Still, I thought he could show some surprise or concern as a father when he heard his daughter was hospitalized. Meanwhile, Kinsley seemed upset she couldn't go to the middle school. Mom, how long do I have to stay in the hospital? Well, it might take a bit. That's all I could say. Honestly, it sucks. I was looking forward to making friends in middle school, and now I can't. Her words pained me. Kinsley had been looking forward to joining a sports club in middle school and having fun. Yet, her middle school life stumbled from the start. By the way, Mom. What is it? Dad hasn't come to visit at all, has he? It's boring enough not being able to see my friends, but I only get to see you and Dr. Sadie all day. Kinsley said this with a fleeting look of loneliness. Indeed. It seemed she hadn't been able to meet anyone lately. Though we could let her friends visit, the clinic wouldn't allow it. It's a critical time now, they say, administering treatment IVs and urging rest, if not absolute, then to a certain extent. Is it really such a critical time? But as a layperson, I couldn't understand. And as for James, I keep asking, please, could you go visit Kinsley? But the response I get is, sorry, but I'm really swamped right now. I don't have time to deal with you. It's not about me, it's about Kinsley. I argue back. Maybe it's okay to ignore me, but can you really ignore your own daughter? Give me a break. I'm at a crucial point right now, wondering if I can make department head. If this ruins my chances, what are you gonna do? Our living situation isn't gonna improve at all. I don't mind that. I was planning on getting a part-time job anyway, and that would allow us to think about what's next for Kinsley. However, James cut off the conversation saying, you don't understand anything. This line, you don't understand anything, has been one of James' frequent complaints towards me. Come to think of it, this tendency has been there since the beginning. I've known James since we were both working at the same company, but his attitude subtly changed after he met my brother when we were considering marriage. I lost my parents in an accident during my high school years. Since then, my older brother Michael, who is a bit older, has acted as my guardian. By the way, my brother is a veteran nurse. It's been his dream for a long time to become a strong male nurse who can take on the tough tasks often shirked by female nurses. And his wife, my sister-in-law Sophia, is a bit older than him and a female doctor. To outsiders, they might seem like an unlikely couple, but I've always thought they were perfect for each other. And they seem genuinely happy together. I've always thought it would be nice to have a marriage like theirs. Since they're workaholics without children, they've always adored Kinsley since she was born. While pondering over my life with James, I suddenly remembered I hadn't told my brother and his wife about Kinsley's situation. What was I thinking? What have I been doing? Sure, I was distraught by the sudden events, but I hadn't contacted the two people who always worry about Kinsley. I hurriedly got in touch with them. They responded immediately, yelling through the tablet screen, "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I'm sorry, I was just a bit overwhelmed. Well, that's understandable. But pediatric cancer, osteosarcoma? Are you sure that clinic is okay? Sophia asked, tilting her head. What do you mean? First off, is the diagnosis based solely on an X-ray? I'm sorry, I don't know much about it. The two exchanged glances, realizing their mistake. They can delve into professional discussions when it's just the two of them, but I'm just a layperson. They sometimes seem to forget that. Oh, sorry. So, what's happening now? She's hospitalized, getting 4 treatments every day. They said now is a crucial time. The two looked at each other again, their expressions turning anxious. Emily, doesn't that seem a bit off? What's off about it? I'm sorry, but just hearing about it, their approach seems medically unsound. Is that so? I tilted my head. First of all, diagnosing pediatric cancer or osteosarcoma with just that amount of information is strange. What about blood tests? CT scans? You need various data to make a diagnosis. Right, Michael chimed in. And to hospitalize her immediately for that treatment? That seems too strange even for me. So, what should we do? As I asked, Michael's face turned serious. First off, you need to stop that treatment immediately. Right. Without proper diagnosis, they can't prescribe the correct medication. It's strange to do anything just based on that diagnosis. That might be true. And if pediatric cancer is indeed the correct diagnosis, attempting to treat it in your local clinic seems far too odd. My area. Now that you mention it, that makes sense. There are general hospitals around here, right? Like ours, if it's said to be pediatrics, certain actions must be taken. So, it shouldn't just be dealt with at a clinic, but rather, she needs to be taken to a general hospital first. Oh, right. What was I thinking? It was the same when Kinsley was born, wasn't it? When Thatcher Clinic couldn't handle it, we were transported to a major hospital by the instructions of the previous doctor. Thanks to that, both Kinsley and I were saved. It's shameful that I had forgotten such a thing. So, what should I do now? Regardless of the reason, if she's being given some unclear medication, that needs to be addressed first. I understand. But what can I do? What am I able to do? Then Sophia said, call an ambulance. An ambulance? Even from a town clinic, when they can't handle a case, it's common to call an ambulance to transfer to a larger hospital. Please, Emily, that's your role. My brother pressed on. In the meantime, we'll investigate that doctor. I froze at the word investigate. What does that mean? Right. For our beloved niece, we won't spare any efforts. She's like a daughter to us too. How could we not step in at a time like this? Tears involuntarily rolled down my cheeks as my brother and Sophia said this. I'm truly grateful, thank you so much. It's nothing. By the way, how is James doing? I tilted my head at Sophia's question. Isn't this a critical situation for your daughter? And James is doing nothing? Well, James is currently overwhelmed with whether he can become a department head, so he hasn't even visited the hospital. The two exchanged glances, nodding emphatically as if they had come to an understanding. Anyway, you need to call 911 to get Kinsley transferred to our hospital. Understood. And so, I rushed to Thatcher Clinic and headed straight for Kinsley's room. But what met my eyes as I opened the door was Kinsley, looking utterly drained. What happened? As I was about to press the nurse call button, I remembered our earlier conversation. Right, 911. I made the call from within the hospital. Excuse me, I'm calling from Thatcher Clinic, but something's wrong with my daughter. Though there was a moment of confusion on the other end, probably wondering why I was calling from inside the clinic, they seemed to understand the urgency as I pleaded, please, I'm begging you. Please, please. The ambulance arrived before long. And just as it did, another car pulled up as well. It was Sophia's. From the hospital room window, I saw the siren's light fade as it parked in front of Thatcher Clinic. Paramedics emerged from the ambulance. I frantically waved from the window. Over here! Over here! What is all this about? What's going on? Then, the clinic's nurse rushed out in a panic. Following that, Sophia, still in her white coat, burst out of the car saying, "It's an emergency," and scrambled towards our room. Sophia! Kinsley is... Emily, how is Kinsley? Sophia immediately went to Kinsley's side, saw the 4 bag, and her face turned to shock. She hastily removed the 4 needle from the arm, checked Kinsley's pulse, eyes, and several other things, then quickly explained the situation to the paramedics. Understood. This is bad, we need to hurry. The paramedics, acknowledging the urgency, placed Kinsley on a stretcher. Hearing the commotion, Dr. Sadie rushed into the room. What are you doing? Why is there an ambulance here? And why are you doing this to Kinsley? Who are you? Why are you doing this without the consent of me, her primary physician? Dr. Sadie let out all in one breath, then glared sharply at both me and Sophia. Undaunted, Sophia glared back at Dr. Sadie and declared, I am this lady's, Emily's, sister-in-law, Kinsley's aunt. And I'm also a doctor at the Central Hospital. At those words, Dr. Sadie flinched. The symptoms Kinsley is showing now are clearly due to an overdose from this 4. What were you thinking giving her this? Dr. Sadie's face changed color as she looked at the 4 bag in Sophia's hand. What exactly is going on here? I asked. At the very least, it's obvious from Kinsley's symptoms that we can guess what's happening. Let's head to the Central Hospital right away. Yes, okay. And you? Sophia pointed sharply at Dr. Sadie. I have a lot of questions for you later. Be prepared. You've done this to my dear niece. Then, a clicking sound of Dr. Sadie's tongue could be heard. It was the first time I'd seen her display such an attitude. We need to go now, Sophia said, and I followed everyone out quickly. But as we passed by Dr. Sadie, I clearly heard her say, having such allies despite being so helpless. A low, resentful voice. I never thought she harbored such feelings towards me. Let's go. Sophia urged, and I boarded the ambulance. Soon after arriving at the Central Hospital's emergency department, Kinsley was quickly treated and her condition improved rapidly. Why was she given such a large dose of this? Both the paramedics and the doctors were astonished to see the 4 bag that had been brought in. It was a solution used for treatment, they explained. But not something that should be administered all day long. Was she hospitalized not to get better, but to worsen? The straightforward surprise from the surrounding doctors astounded me. But why? Dr. Sadie has always been looking after her so carefully. Why would she? As I explained that Kinsley had been hospitalized on suspicion of osteosarcoma, immediate tests were conducted. However, the doctors who conducted the CT scan turned pale on the spot. Osteosarcoma? You must be joking. This is just arthritis. Ridiculous, how could such a basic misdiagnosis happen? The emergency room doctor was furious enough to say that. Is that so? Can such a distinction be made so easily? I was astonished. No, it's not that simple for a layperson to determine. Was Dr. Sadie deceiving me, using that fact? Anyway, our hospital has a private room available, so let's closely monitor her until she recovers. At my brother's words, a private room? I was surprised. It's okay. It's available now, and don't worry about the cost, we'll cover it. Despite my concerns, nothing could replace Kinsley's life. That night, I stayed overnight in the private room, having a side bed set up for me. Kinsley, whose consciousness had recovered thanks to the treatment, was scared and wanted me to stay with her all the time. I, too, had decided in my heart that I must stay with her at all times, not knowing what might happen. And then, after Kinsley had fallen asleep that night, just as I was starting to doze off, I suddenly heard soft footsteps in the corridor outside. I immediately woke up but pretended to be asleep. Then, the sound of the hospital room door quietly opening. Someone was approaching with muffled footsteps. I thought I could finally do something for that person. Now that it has come to this. It was Dr. Sadie's voice. With this, along with her voice, the sound of rummaging through a bag could be heard. Then, she pulled out a small bottle and a syringe. While I was getting ready to move, I squinted to see what she was doing. Dr. Sadie opened the small bottle, filled the syringe with some liquid, and reached for Kinsley's arm. That's when I shouted, "What are you doing?" and leaped up, tackling Dr. Sadie. With a gasp, the bottle and syringe fell to the floor. Oh, you're heavy, I can't breathe. You were awake? It's not about me being awake. Get off, you're too heavy. Though I wasn't twice Dr. Sadie's weight, I was about 1.5 times heavier. Struggling, Dr. Sadie couldn't move at all under my weight. Our commotion woke Kinsley, who cried out in surprise, why? What's happening? I told her, Kinsley, press the nurse call button. Okay, Kinsley pressed the nurse call button frantically, over and over. Then, the sound of someone approaching from the nurse's station could be heard. The door opened, and the light turned on. What in the world is going on here? It was my brother who spoke. Again, a clicking sound of Dr. Sadie's tongue could be heard. Emily, well done. As he said that, my brother secured Dr. Sadie's hands and feet with bands. This should keep her from moving for now. He picked up the dropped medicine bottle, his expression contorting. What were you planning to do with our niece's life? My brother's anger was palpable. Because you were taking her away from our clinic. I thought of a more peaceful, painless way to handle this for her, but you forced my hand to act quickly. To act for what, exactly? Her vague words frightened me as I began to grasp their meaning. My brother looked at me and stated clearly. In other words, despite being a doctor, she was targeting Kinsley's life. I felt like I was choking upon hearing this. What were you trying to do to me, Dr. Sadie? Kinsley also cried out in a voice close to tears. Then, more noise at the door. Sophia and someone else were there. Ah, so she really came after all. You expected this? I thought if we did this, she would surely come directly. That's why we chose the private room. It's better not to disturb the other patients, after all. Then, Sophia gestured for the person behind her to come in. We rushed to investigate, and the answer came back incredibly fast, didn't it? Right, James? Eh? I didn't understand why James was here. What's this about? My brother-in-law, sister-in-law calling me at this hour. Ah, James, it's all over. Everything we've done has been exposed. Eh? Sadie, why are you here? And why are you in that state? James noticed Dr. Sadie, who was restrained and on the floor, and hurriedly spoke to her. James? Sadie? You are on a first-name basis? I exclaimed, and my brother shushed me. Ah, right. Kinsley was listening. It's okay, Mom. Kinsley shouted. I want to know everything anyway. After all, I'm here and suffered because of what Dad and Dr. Sadie did, right? You're very perceptive, Kinsley. Sophia said, gently patting Kinsley's shoulder and back. I'm already in middle school. I'd rather know than have it hidden from me. Please tell me, Mom. I was torn and angry at myself for being helpless. Sophia, holding the drug, confronted Dr. Sadie. What you brought was a muscle relaxant, right? If injected directly at this concentration, it's obvious what would happen to her body. Sophia's hands were gloved. Undoubtedly to preserve evidence. The visitors are here for you. Then, several more visitors arrived in the room. It was indeed good that the room was spacious. The visitors, flashing police badges at James and Dr. Sadie, declared firmly. We're from the County Police Department. Sadie Thatcher, you are under arrest for the current offense. James McKinnon, as an accomplice, you'll also come with us. Upon hearing this, James reflexively tried to flee the scene. Hold on. You can't just run away. My brother's strong hand grabbed James' shoulder. I've been acting as Emily's guardian since our parents died. I thought I could trust you to make our family happy, but what the hell? Your own child. While restraining my yelling brother, Sophia allowed another person to enter. We really had to rush the investigation. It took a lot of manpower, but thanks to that, we found out. This guy, he's been embezzling quite a bit from the company. Embezzlement? I couldn't help but blurt out, and James averted his gaze. Yes, sorry, I'm from a detective agency. We were asked to investigate urgently. But James said he was too busy possibly becoming a department head, that he couldn't even come home, let alone visit his hospitalized daughter. The detective continued matter-of-factly. About that. It's actually the opposite. He was supposed to become a department head, but that got put on hold because of suspicions of embezzlement. I had no idea he was involved in such things. It was beyond my imagination. And to cover the embezzled amount, he wanted the insurance money. Insurance money? He had a $400,000 life insurance policy on Kinsley. The implications didn't immediately register with me. James, were you planning to cover it with Kinsley's life? I had no choice. Otherwise, I'd be kicked out of the company. What are you saying? I couldn't help but raise my hand against James. With a loud smack, my hand struck James' cheek and he fell to the ground. Damn, you've really gotten big. That's why I've lost my attraction to you. That's a separate issue. No matter how much I've gained weight or whatever, you always had eyes for the beautiful Dr. Sadie. That's right, ever since you gave birth and kept gaining weight. I was at a loss for words. I wished I could have stayed slim. But I got sick during my pregnancy, it couldn't be helped. That's right. Emily developed kidney problems during her pregnancy. It's understandable that she gained weight after that. Sophia supported me. That's beside the point, but it was Dr. Sadie who comforted me during that time. The police officers sighed upon hearing this. Forget about that now. What matters is this man tried to take his daughter's life. And the husband solicited her to do it. We'll take these two in custody. I understand your anger, ma'am, but you don't want to be charged with assault, do you? I paused, realizing. We'll try to keep you out of any charges, considering you'll have a lot on your plate with your daughter. Yes. Oh, but can I ask just one thing? Didn't you love Kinsley? I asked James. I did, at first. But as you kept gaining weight, I started to worry Kinsley would end up the same, and I just didn't care anymore. So, Dad, you thought of me that way. And then you just didn't need me anymore. Kinsley began to cry. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I hugged Kinsley. It's because of me. No, it's not your fault, Mom. You always did what was best for me. Even a middle schooler can see that Dad is just blaming everything on you. I don't even want to call him Dad anymore. Just do whatever you want. Yes, that's the best way. Sophia agreed. And you were the head of Thatcher Clinic, right? For someone in the medical profession to do such a thing, even if it was attempted, you can never return to this industry. Was this man so important to you that you were willing to throw away your entire career? You wouldn't understand. Dr. Sadie threw back at us, sounding frustrated. I worked hard to take over the clinic after putting in so much effort, but James was the only one who saw me as a woman. Do you understand how that feels? There's no way I would. I'm not you. I did make an effort. Unlike you. I really tried hard when it came to her. My brother and Sophia nodded to each other. Then Dr. Sadie groaned and passed out on the spot. Sophia checked her pulse and her condition, then told the police she was okay to be taken away. And then I faced James, saying, I'll have a lawyer file for divorce. You don't care about us anymore, right? If it's all the same to you, then stay out of our lives for good. And I'll be taking alimony and child support for raising this child. I don't ever want to see you again, so make it a lump sum. I never imagined I could say such a thing so calmly. It must have been building up inside me for a long time. James glared at me in frustration. But I won't be defeated by such things anymore. So, goodbye forever. I said that to James for the last time. After their arrest, the two were put on trial. Due to the premeditated nature of their actions and the intent to take a life, they were sentenced to prison despite it being attempted. Thatcher Clinic also closed due to Dr. Sadie's arrest. The former head doctor, despite his old age, was busy writing referral letters for current patients. It turned into quite a mess. I'm truly sorry for what I've done. No, we've been indebted to you for a long time. How did it come to this? I asked, and the former head doctor sighed. Maybe my expectations were too high. I felt reluctant to take the alimony, but the former head doctor made sure it was paid properly. With the two of you facing tough times ahead, the clinic's closing anyway, and we'll get some money from selling the equipment. He said kindly. James was, of course, found guilty. He was charged as an instigator, complaining that a prison sentence was too harsh for him. Unfortunately, under the law, instigation is considered complicity. He received a prison sentence. After all, it was James' idea, and without him, Dr. Sadie might not have strayed. The attempted insurance murder of their daughter became a regional news story. Being a victim made it difficult for me to continue living in the area. That's when my brother and Sophia suggested, how about moving far away? We were thinking of going into remote medical service for a while. Since I'm a doctor and Michael is a nurse, it seemed perfect. We were planning to move eventually, but the timing never matched. So, why not go together? They invited me to join them. Perhaps because the incident made it uncomfortable to stay at the hospital. But they never explicitly said so, and in that silence, I could feel their kindness. So, I decided to take them up on their offer. After a while, we moved to a distant area. Though it was considered a remote area, a shopping mall was just an hour's drive away. Essentially, the local clinic there had been without a successor, and there was a period with no doctor available. While it's possible to drive to a hospital, having a reliable place within the town, especially for areas with a high elderly population where not everyone can drive, having a clinic within walking distance is invaluable. Considering this, Thatcher Clinic, where Dr. Sadie had committed her acts, must have been a significant loss to the community. In the new place, I was employed in an administrative role at the clinic. Though they initially said they couldn't offer much salary due to my lack of experience, I didn't mind. Having a job gap and just thinking about starting part-time work, I was grateful for any opportunity. With the alimony and child support added, I could sufficiently raise my daughter. Kinsley's health also returned to normal, and she grew taller rapidly. It seems the arthritis was related to growing pains. What a thing to exploit, I thought. Lately, in this sparsely populated area, she's been thriving in sports clubs and living freely. With my brother and his wife, and my daughter forming a new family, I wish for us to live peacefully from now on.